Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Chelsea from the blog, The Cottage Vegetable. Today I'm going to show you how I make my shortcut way to make a rustic sourdough loaf. I'm sure this recipe will ruffle some feathers in the bread making world, but this is a really easy way to get a rustic sourdough loaf on the table. You skip all the stretching and folding, there's very little kneading, and there's no second proofing in the morning. And by using your mixer, you cut down on a lot of work, making this a very fast and easy recipe. Now this dough does need an overnight soak or at least 12 hours to soak and ferment. So this is me the night before making the dough. The ingredients are simple. It's just your sourdough starter, some water, salt and sugar, and your flour. You first want to mix your sourdough starter, your water, your sugar, and your salt, and mix it until it's milky before you add your flour. Now it's important to only put your flour in 1/2 cup in at a time, because it's really easy to overwork your machine if you just dump all your flour in at once, but you can actually watch the texture of the dough, which is really important. You're really aiming for a dough that is sticky but still holding its shape. Now I always pour in my first 2 cups of flour in, let that mix very well, and then I will watch how sticky it's becoming and go from there. Now this is way too wet. I'm going to continue to add my flour in 1/2 cup at a time. Let it mix very well until I get something that looks a little bit like this. A dough that is sticky but still holding its shape. Now after you've mixed your dough, let it knead for a few minutes in there until it's nice and smooth. It is going to be sticky, so it's really important to oil a bowl. This is the same bowl I use for all my bread. But at this point, go ahead and scrape your dough out of your mixing bowl and put it into your oiled bowl. You're going to flip it over a few times so it's all covered in oil, and then it's time to let it soak overnight. Now I like to cover it with a really wet tea cloth, even folded in half, because tea cloths tend to dry out pretty fast overnight. You don't want a skin forming on top. Let it sit on your countertop overnight, and in the morning it should be doubled in size. You're going to punch it down and you're going to flip it over onto a surface. I usually use this wood cutting board, and you're going to shape it into a ball. Now to shape the dough into a ball, you first, after you dump it out of your bowl, you're just going to take the edges and fold it into the middle several times until you can tell it's kind of holding that ball shape. Okay, and then eventually you're going to pull up all the edges up to the middle, and then you're going to squeeze it almost like a tube, and then flip the dough over. And then to further shape it into a ball, you're going to shimmy your hands underneath and just try to create this nice tight tension on top. Now I'm not going to do a second proofing with this dough. Instead, I'm just going to put the bowl back over. It can rest while the oven is preheating to 415. Please remember that you need to put your Dutch oven in the oven while it preheats, because you actually need a hot Dutch oven to bake this in. When the oven is preheated, go ahead and transfer your dough to a nice big piece of parchment paper and make 2 slits on top. You, of course, can be creative and carve whatever mountain landscape you want on top, but I like just 2 slits. Then you simply transfer your dough into your Dutch oven, being very careful because it's very hot. But you want to make sure that parchment paper is big enough to reach outside of the edges because you're going to be actually pouring some water underneath the parchment paper. Don't skip the water because this is going to give it steam and give your bread a really good rise. Quickly put the lid back on and bake it for 20 minutes. After those 20 minutes, you can go ahead and take the lid off and bake it for 40 minutes. After it's done, it should be nice and golden brown on top. The steam should have given it a nice rise in the oven, and you can just transfer it to a cooling rack and you are done. This is a really easy recipe to get that classic rustic loaf on the table. What's great about this loaf is that you can actually then use this bread for things like French toast, garlic bread. You can make your own croutons. You can even add herbs or cheese or nuts to make your own flavors. This is a great basic recipe to have on hand. I hope this helps. The blog post for the exact measurements and tools you need will be in the description box below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.